welcome to what I hope is a very short series of videos entailing why I've decided to LS swap my Land Cruiser. This is my 97 Lexus LX450. I've had this truck for a few years and it's awesome. It has electronic locking front and rear and center differentials. I put a lift and tires on it. I've driven it out to Moab. It is just, I love this truck. The one thing I didn't always love about it was the engine. And it kind of forced my hand at this swap as it developed rod knock about 2 years ago. I pulled the engine out, found another used engine, and it wasn't the right one. Turns out OBD1 and OBD2 engines are not interchangeable. With lack of any good used engine option, I started looking into swaps. Also, the thought of having another 100 horsepower was pretty appealing as this truck is it's pretty slow. So I think I'm the first person to do an LS swap for fuel economy because that is the main driving force. At 12 to 13 miles to the gallon at its best, the 4.5 liter left a lot to be desired. Now, I decided to use a 5.3 liter engine for the swap for multiple reasons. The main one being it's good on gas, the second one being it's cheap, and the third one being it's cheap. Yeah, this swap is supposed to cost $10,000 if you ask the people on the forum, and I'm nowhere near that number. I'm about 30% of that number right now, and I have just a little bit more to go. I also decided to use the 6L80 out of a G8 GT. It's a readily available transmission. They're pretty affordable, and they're very robust. Should get the best economy out of that combination, hoping to run an 87 octane. Now, this is probably not the 5.3 I should have used. This is an LM4 out of a Trailblazer. It was a lot of work to get this in here. I had to change the trigger wheel and the front cover. I had to drill a hole for the oil dipstick, and it has no place to mount knock sensors. So ideally, I'd probably use an 07 up for this application, but it's already in, so we're gonna just run with it. Now, one of the questions you may have at this point is, Eric, why did you do all this work for just a 5.3? Well, I wanted to. I wanted to get good gas mileage, I wanted to be reliable, and I didn't want to spend a fortune in the process. So maybe you're at that stage where it's time to pull that engine out. You're either tired of the poor gas mileage or the low power, or you have an engine sitting there ready to go in, or maybe your engine's got rod knock or a blown head gasket or low oil pressure. I mean, the list can be quite lengthy as to why you want to do this swap. The first thing I would do is tape your fenders. This protects you against scratches, dropping tools, some grease, any fluids. This is a very cheap and quick way to protect your paint, and it'll save you a lot of grief if you end up dropping something on it. As far as pulling the actual engine out, it's a pretty simple procedure. Everything's really easy to get to, nothing's really a fight, but I will say this engine is very heavy, so as you start to unbolt it, keep that in mind. It's about 650 pounds. I've actually weighed them. You want to pull the harness out through the firewall. It disconnects from the computer, it disconnects from the dash harness, and you just lay it on top. You're going to be very careful pulling that harness off of the engine. You're going to need a lot of that harness and connectors to install the sending units on the 5.3 or whatever engine you decide to use. You're going to want to save your oil pressure sending unit and your temperature sending unit because that'll run your factory gauges. Now, the transmission usually comes out of the bottom, the engine usually comes out of the top. It's a pretty simple process. Again, just take your time. There's no rush. Hopefully you're not in a rush for this. This is something that I haven't been in a rush for because I'm 2 years in. So I'd like to know, this is part 1. I have no idea how many parts there'll be, but please subscribe to my channel as I'll be posting updates on what parts I've used, how I got something to work, how I got something to fit, and every step of this process, including getting up to speed to where I currently am and real-time updates as I get this swap done, which I am going to get this swap done, to my friends that think that it'll never happen.